Hello everybody and welcome to Geeking Out About It. Today we're going to be talking about Avatar. No, not that Avatar. The one written by James Cameron featuring all the cool blue people.
Yeah, we've actually already covered Avatar: The Last Airbender in a previous episode of Geeking Out About It. And if there's ever enough demand, we can do an episode 2, but in the meanwhile, I like to stay away from anything M. Night Shyamalan got his clutches on. So we're going to be doing James Cameron's Avatar instead, and myself and Kayleen, we've actually seen that movie a number of times,
yes.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Kaylin, you haven't actually seen Avatar.
Never seen it.
No, but that's all right, because that gives us an opportunity to do a great little segment where we're going to show Kaylin a couple of clips from Avatar, very short ones, and have her try to describe to us what's going on in those clips. And this isn't to make fun of Kaylin or anything like that. We're not poking fun and say, she doesn't know what's happening. It's actually to hopefully prove the exact opposite point. Avatar is exceedingly accessible, especially for audiences that perhaps can't understand the dialogue that's happening in it because they don't speak English. And we're going to hopefully see that in action right now. So let's show the first clip. Kaylin, would you describe what's happening?
Okay, so it looks like some sort of military guy is taking a sip of coffee, and looks like some sort of war is going on. Probably humans versus the blue people.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Okay.
This is a display of overwhelming firepower by the Sky People against the Na'vi, and they are currently destroying Home Tree. A little bit hard to see in the shot we've specifically picked because of the massive pile of smoke that's coming out of it. They've already launched incendiaries at this point, but this is our military forces, basically humanity's military forces, just completely decimating the natives of Pandora. Let's go ahead and move on to the next clip. All right, describe what you see here.
It looks like somebody's connecting something to something. I can't tell if it's like some sort of plant, vine, flower thing. It's got some color. I'm not sure what it is though.
Well, this is one of the harder ones out of the bunch, I would say.
Our main guy, Jake, is trying to connect with one of the dire horses.
Okay.
Yeah.
We possibly chose a little bit too tight of a shot on this one, but what that is it's the linking of a neural cue. So that braid they have on the back of their head that allows them to communicate with things, which we'll talk about later, but we're not going to focus on right now. Let's go to the next clip.
Okay, so it looks like somebody's doing some sort of training, or they're running away from somebody. It almost looks like somebody's maybe escaping from something. They kind of have an interesting outfit on. Yeah.
That is a hospital smock being worn by our main character, Jake. It's a little bit hard, I will admit, by the way, audience, it's a little bit hard for Kaylin to see these clips exactly. But that is our main character, Jake, running for the first time with his avatar legs. He's not really supposed to be doing this, but he's been crippled for a long time and is enjoying himself. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.
Okay, so now the blue people are in the sky and them, so it looks like maybe they're finally ready to attack back.
What do you think these creatures are? What would you guess that they are?
Definitely some sort of bird dinosaur thing.
Yeah, it's very clear though. This is an attack that's happening.
Right.
You know, this is the final battle, as it were.
And they're dropping robots and stuff
Yeah, this is the climactic battle in Avatar, where the forces of the Na'vi, arranged from all the clans, are about to battle the combined and all they have military forces of humanity, who are making a final strike on the Tree of Souls. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I would say that you got a fair number of important bits out of those clips, even though you didn't really know what you were looking at, though.
Yeah.
Perhaps it would be best, though, if we did a little bit of a summary for what actually happens in Avatar, though.
So the main general idea, so we get Jake, our main character.
Okay.
He's an ex-war veteran who suffered paralysis in his legs, and he hasn't been able to walk for, I think, at least a year. And so he basically, his twin brother gets killed, and he has to take his place on the Avatar program. They're specifically designed to connect with one person, and since Jake and his brother are identical twins, they were able to, not waste a bunch of money. So, and then we make it to Pandora, and then one of the scenes...
So what is Pandora?
Pandora is...
It's a jungle moon that's got a lot of valuable resources humanity's trying to exploit on it. It orbits a large gas giant, but it's basically mini Earth, and it's got tons of very interesting creatures on it, which we will be talking about later. It is a very scary place for humans and a very nice place for the Na'vi.
I see. And the Na'vi are the avatars. Or the...
Sort of. Avatars are hybrids between humans and Na'vi.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I see.
the avatars are like their costumes, kind of.
Okay.
And then the Na'vi are the natives on the planet of Pandora. So like one of the shots you saw with like Jake running was that's like
Right.
his first time being on feet.
Right.
And
okay.
so the whole cool thing about the avatars is they can feel the world, like they can, it's not just like a video game where you're like, oh, like I'm walking around. It's like
Right.
you are the character.
Yeah, okay. I see. So if they get hurt, they actually get hurt, or
Yes.
They feel like it anyway.
they feel
Yeah.
like it anyway. Okay.
All of
Right.
the other avatars they have at this time are scientists and diplomats meant to communicate with the Na'vi, but Jake is a Marine. So he ends up actually teaming up more with the commander of the military forces in the area, who's using him sort of like a scout embedded in the science team, and ends up meeting Natiri, which is another scene you saw.
Was that when he was like glowing?
Yes. So that's like shortly after Natiri saved him from getting attacked from the Thanator. And so she was going to
see.
kill him, and Jake was like following her and was like, hey, why didn't you kill me? Like, what the heck? And she's like, go away. And then that's when you see the scene of him getting chosen by the Wood Sprites.
Okay, so what are the Wood Sprites?
They're sort of an omen for the Na'vi. They're an extension of the Tree of Souls, and that's sort of their god, Awa.
Okay.
And they're considered very pure spirits that are messengers for Awa. So when so many of them just appear and cluster onto Jake, Natiri takes it as a sign that he's sort of a chosen one, and leaves and keeps him alive, brings him back to the village so that he can be at least brought before the council.
So how does he feel about being like the chosen one?
He's indifferent to that. He doesn't really have an understanding of Na'vi religion.
Yeah.
But
I
it kept
see.
him alive, so that's nice. And it
Okay.
got him in the camp, which is very important to him because you know succeeding in his mission is still his primary goal at this time.
Right.
But then he lives with the Na'vi for a long period of time. We spend a lot of the movie him learning their ways, and he becomes closer and closer to those people, and he starts to realize that humanity was being more villainous in the situation than he
Right.
originally thought. And he ends up sort of joining the Na'vi's side instead and leading a bit of a rebellion against humanity.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He begins to see the true beauty of Pandora and its
I see.
people versus the humans that are trying to like tear it down.
How does he do with that? Like, does he succeed?
Well, he actually, by becoming Truk Makto, the rider of Last Shadow, which is the big Great Leon-Matrix creature, which we'll be talking about later. And he rides it, he tames it and rides it and becomes a sort of a prophet figure for the
Yeah.
Na'vi so that he can unite the clans and a time of the time of great sorrow is what they call it, and they lead this mass uprising against humanity. And they drive them off the planet. They successfully defeat, with the help of Awa, they successfully defeat the human occupiers and drive them away. But it's overall, it's a fairly simple story. It's the hey, colonization is bad sort of thing, you know?
Yeah, your typical hero's arc, if you will, of
I
just,
see.
yeah.
So what kind of, I don't know if it's clarified in the movie, what kind of materials were the humans looking for specifically on Pandora?
Well, it's actually a really good transition into our next segment, talking about world building, because what they're looking for is a mineral that is hilariously called unobtainium, despite the fact that while the guy introduces it, he's holding a piece of it. So it's really, really hard to obtain him.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
they're there to mine this mysterious substance, which apparently has all sorts of industrial uses.
Yeah.
And they are willing to strip the entire planet bare to get it.
Welcome back from the break. Our next segment's going to be all about biology.
Unfortunately, we don't know anything about biology. So we brought in the expert, David Hubert.
My name's David Hubert. I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Integrated Biology here at OSU. My research focuses on thermal biology. I also teach vertebrate biology courses, which is pretty relevant to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that is actually pretty close to what we're going to be talking about here. What we're actually doing is talking a little bit about fictional biology, because we're talking about the world of Avatar, which means this is all about study of alien biology, or at least in theoretical alien biology.
What would you say your relationship is with Avatar?
I think it's a great movie. It's fun. I like the overall plot for it, but what really gets me excited is the way that they depicted the biology, the things they got right and the things that they got wrong.
The first thing I'd like to ask is, how likely is it for the Na'vi to look as human as they do in the movies?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, and that's kind of one of the primary things that I find interesting about this. This is where they messed up. when it comes to the biology in this. They found some really good consistencies that show how evolution actually has worked on Earth and how it likely would work in a different setting. And they break all those rules with the Navi. Most of the other organisms like them on there are hexapods, so they have 6 limbs, 2 rear limbs and 4 front limbs. The Navi don't. All of the other organisms have 4 eyes, 2 sets. The Navi don't. Nobody else has hair. They do. And there's a bunch of other things. They also have, everybody else has these respiratory openings in their actual like chest cavity, and these guys have nostrils just like we do. And so it seems like what they did is they anthropomorphized them. They made them look more like us, probably to make them more relatable. But they don't fit very well into the biology represented on Pandora in the movie.
Another thing that like the Navi people have that's like special to them is like, and I guess the creatures around them, is the neural cue. So it's connected to like the brain. Are there any animals on Earth that kind of have something similar to that, or?
These cues that they have allow them to link neurally, like link their brains basically to other organisms, which means it's compatible between all these organisms. And for that to be the case, this would had to have been a shared trait from a way long ago ancestor that was maintained with all these different species.
I kind of connected like that whole relationship because like I ride horses, and like a lot of times, like especially with the horse I've been riding for like the past 5 years, like in my brain I'll be like, we should probably walk soon, and he'll just like, okay, walk, and I'm like, I didn't tell you to do that yet. You did that too soon.
Yeah, and like there's lots of ways that we do connect with animals, other animals that are similar and may feel similar, right? And there's body language, there's smells, there's different chemical cues that we give off, or sounds that we may not even know we're making, that can totally give you that really direct connection. But there's still the separation between nervous systems.
Yeah.
That's probably enough on the Navi, so we should probably move to our next creature, the Mountain Banshee.
Yes.
Mountain Banshee has been compared to birds, reptiles, dragons even. How much do these comparisons hold up in seeing it in front of you?
So in all honesty, if I were to compare it to anything here, it would be way more close to a bat, which is a mammal. So it wouldn't be like any of those. So these things are scaleless as far as we can see. They have, these developed teeth. They have these different features that look more mammalian than they do anything else. And especially when it comes down to the wing structure. So powered flight, as far as invertebrates on Earth, has evolved 3 different times that we know of. We've got it in bats, we've got it in birds, and we have it in what's called pterosaurs. And they all have distinct ways in which their wings were structured. It's all out of the front limbs, just like these are. But you have the pterosaurs, their pinky extends out and creates a webbing there, like that. But they still have the hand structure. With birds, their hand would be super modified, and it's more like this, and then they have feathers coming off of it. But with bats, their hand is keeled down, their thumb points up, and then they have webbing between all the fingers. And that's the same thing you see with these. So it's that same basic structure, except for the fact that they have the webbing broken up, which is a different thing. But yeah.
So bats are kind of like little bodies and then just like big hands like out from them.
Yeah, basically.
That's so cool. I'm
I
gonna
really
look
like
at bats.
that they're actually just all riding bats.
Next is the Tree of Souls, which is like their main reason for living, I would say.
Well, one of the most interesting aspects of the Tree of Souls, I would say, is its reproductive organism, which is its seed that it throws around. It's called the Wood Sprite by the humans, or Takarina by the Navi, and I know that because I made a painting one time. And it looks a lot like those little fluffy seeds that kind of just drift on the wind wherever they go, but it moves itself like a jellyfish.
Yep.
And it picks where it goes. It seems to have some kind of sapience, despite the fact that it's a tiny little sprite.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
So, yeah, it looks like dandelion fluff, right? Like the wishes or whatever that you see out there. And so the seed dispersal that for plants that kind of floats around like that, totally a thing. We have that. That's not unreasonable.
What would make them that neon kind of color, like glowing?
Yeah, so this is weird. So they, there's a lot of bioluminescence in this, which is like light sourced from a biological source. And they have a lot of their plants have it. It actually seems to be pretty universal. All different types of organisms have it. Here, we don't have it in plants. You'll find it in fungi, you'll find it in algae, you'll find it in insects, but none of our plants have it.
Well, we should talk about the biggest and most interesting plant of them all before we get on. Well, I guess I can't say the biggest because home tree is sort of that, but no. the Tree of Souls is sort of that. I mean, we need to talk about Home Tree, the really big tree that they go and blow up in the halfway point in the movie.
Yes.
This thing is massive. When we see the military forces pull up to it, all these vehicles, I can't remember the names offhand, they look up at this tree, which is clearly miles above them, like maybe 1 or 2 miles tall. How possible even is it for a tree to grow that size?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have some pretty massive trees here, but that one does seem to be bigger than anything I'm aware of. This does go back to, it's supposed to have less gravity there, which means structurally it should be able to support larger things with less gravity, or, yeah, less powerful gravity. It doesn't seem, it's not the most unreasonable thing for there to be very massive trees.
Could this tree be considered a keystone species?
Likely, with something that big. So an example similar, so oaks can be considered keystone species here.
Right.
Yeah.
Very briefly, because I'm kind of dumb. What is a keystone species?
So essentially a keystone species is going to be a species in an ecosystem that has kind of an outsized impact on what's happening in that system. That if you remove them, it might collapse the whole thing. If, they're just very, very important to the system that's there.
So burning it down to dig a mine was bad.
Probably bad.
Right, like
Well,
a
that's good. The
domino
movie
effect.
did try to tell us that, so that's good.
That's good. Yes.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you so much to David Hubert for joining us to talk about Avatar and the world of Pandora.
Thanks for having me. It has been fun geeking out with you about Avatar.
It's been great
Thank
having
you.
you on.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the plug. Yes, we will be back shortly, but we're going to go to a quick break, so we'll see you when we come back.
Welcome back. We just got done with talking with biologist David Hubert about the biology behind Avatar and all of its characters and world. But now we're going to be talking about kind of the world outside of Avatar that's been built.
More specifically, outside of the one movie we've been talking about, because Avatar, despite the fact that it has some sequels coming up, also has, far more interestingly, a game and a world at Disney World and Animal Kingdom, which I would love to talk to in just a minute. First, we should talk about the game. Ubisoft is making a new game pretty soon called Frontiers of Pandora. It'll be released in 2022. And it's going to be one of the most ambitious projects that they've done in a long while. I believe, and this is just speculation, that it was done as sort of an application to see if they could get access to the Star Wars license, but they seem to have spared no expense in the development of this game. And I'm definitely excited to try it out when it comes out. There has been another game, which was made for the Wii, weirdly enough, but I don't necessarily recommend the playing of that one.
Why not?
I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not great either.
Just not
Still,
Okay.
it's certainly not the most impressive thing we've got to go for on transmedia assets, which,
Yeah.
by the way, I should explain transmedia as a word. It just means things outside of the original version. So if it's not the movie, it's transmedia. The most important thing to talk about from that, though, is Animal Kingdom's world, Pandora, that they built in at Disney World Resort in Orlando. It has got to be one of the most immersive lands ever created at Disney World. I actually went there last June with my brother and Jacob, who were the previous hosts of Geeking Out About It. And we went and we took some footage of it because it is just so amazing the way that this thing is built. You've got the floating Hallelujah Mountains right in front of you. You can see them physically there. They're held up by these disguised pipework structures, which are supposed to look like vines. The plants are all actually bioluminescent. They're not actually bioluminescent, but they're luminescent because at nighttime, when the sun goes down, they all light up. And it looks like you're standing in the wonderful twilight world of Pandora. One ride you can always see Pandora at night in is the River Journey, the Na'vi River Journey ride, which just takes you through the nighttime atmosphere, shows you all the little moving plants and animals and stuff. None of the big animals make it in, but the little twirly-whirly lizard thing that we talked about with David, that's in there. Somehow, it is nothing compared to the most impressive thing in all of Pandora, which is the Flight of Passage ride. Which might be the best ride ever made at any Disney park anywhere.
What makes it the best?
The sheer immersion that it manages to capture is just amazing. So it puts you in the seat of an eco-tourist. So you're there to experience Pandora through an avatar body, which you're being allowed to link with for this special ceremony where they're going to be going on a flight on a Banshee. Now, it's not technically said that the avatar's body is on its first flight, but you certainly are. And it's amazing. They strap you into these sort of motorcycle-looking apparatuses that lock you into place so you can't move anymore. You just kind of lunge forward. And it looks like the pose that you'd be riding a Banshee on, say. And then it uses 3D glasses, smell generators, mist generators, wind generators, and multidimensional movement to create the experience of riding a Banshee. It's very, very impressive, and it features some of the most impressive technology that I've ever seen on a ride in Disney.
Yes, and now we're going to be talking about the lasting effects that Avatar had on technology, specifically filmmaking technologies.
Such as motion capture, which actually wasn't really available at the time. So James Cameron originally wrote the script in 1994 and planned to start shooting after Titanic was released, but decided to wait until the technology was advanced enough to complete his vision. He wanted digital effects so realistic that audiences couldn't tell the difference between the live action and CGI elements. Instead of creating the Na'vi from scratch using the type of 3D animation we see in Pixar movies, Avatar used motion capture technology, where actors playing the Na'vi did their shooting on a mocap stage. The stage is a large room with hundreds of cameras set up to capture the actors from all angles. Actors wearing mocap suits with dots and markers for cameras and sensors to pick up. The cameras then send that information to monitors, creating a real-time digital skeleton of the actors' performances. A similar process is used where small cameras are mounted on an actor's head and point at their face, similar to the bodysuit. The face has dots drawn on it in the most important places so that the cameras can track even the most minute expressions. A rough render of the scene can then be created live on a monitor, showing the environment as well as the CGI characters on the screen. Artists and animators then bring the footage to life by adding detail and texture to the characters, as well as fully rendered environments.
Speaking of rendering, the visual detail of the CGI of Avatar was an immense technological feat. In 2009, a 10,000 square foot server farm was required for rendering, using 4,000 servers, 35,000 processor cores, and 104 terabytes of RAM. The movie required a petabyte, or 1 million gigabytes, of digital storage for the film, averaging 17.28 gigabytes per minute. Microsoft had to create a digital asset management system called Gaia, specifically for Avatar, so that all the data could be stored and cataloged. The final film ended up being about 60% computer-generated and 40% live action, according to James Cameron, which is insane.
That's not the only insane thing. The film had a budget of around $237 million, but it more than made up for it, bringing in a whopping $2.8 billion. One of the biggest selling points for Avatar was the option to view it in 3D. Many people attribute the film's success to the fact that it was so heavily marketed to be seen in 3D, crowds of people wanted to see the spectacle that was promised in the marketing. Not to mention the fact that prices for 3D movie tickets were always a few dollars extra. 3D movies became extremely popular after the release of Avatar. In 2008, the year before Avatar was released, there were 11 movies worldwide that were released in 3D. In 2010, there were 57.
That's crazy.
Right? The trend ruled the film industry for many years, many people calling it the future of cinema until around the mid to late 2010s when people started getting tired of it.
Not too tired of it, apparently, because James Cameron was greenlit almost immediately to make multiple Avatar sequels. So why has it taken so long for them to be released? Well, after the 4-year writing process was finished, Cameron knew that the new movies had to be as technologically advanced today as the first film was in 2009. The sequels plan on heavily featuring underwater scenes, which is extremely difficult to do while using motion capture technology. The water creates a moving mirror, which reflects and refracts the light coming off the mocap suits and confuses the cameras and sensors. Cameron also has suggested that the sequels may be shown in glasses-free 3D, which obviously requires a lot of work, money, and innovation to pull off. There's also a new lighting system being used, which will hopefully make the film less reliant on post-production lighting, but we'll see.
No matter what happens with the sequels, Avatar has already left a huge impact on the film industry and pop culture as a whole. With its groundbreaking visuals and extensive world, Avatar's legacy is undeniable, and we can't wait to see where they take this franchise next.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. If you like us and you like Geeking Out About It, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel KBVR TV for more content from us. And if you want just more general web content, we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok that you can watch as many videos and behind the scenes as you want. That's all for today. We'll see you next time. Bye!